Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unarmored Talk podcast, where we will have real life conversations that helps you develop an accurate way of thinking. The way we're going to do this is by gaining a better understanding how feelings, emotions, and thoughts can influence the outcome of a personal or professional challenge. I'm your host, Mario P. Fields, and today's guest is Jay Prewitt. He's a business consultant. He's a community activist. He does a lot of other things, and I had some business interactions with him previously a couple of weeks ago, and I tell you, he had me running outside doing about 6 or 7 sprints to the mailbox and back. Jay, welcome to Unarmored Talk.
Thank you so much, Mario. I got to keep you on your toes. So,
yeah, it keeps me tall too. You know, it keeps me above 5'2.5". You know what I mean?
There you go. That's good enough.
Yeah, man. So, hey, thanks again for coming on the show, and tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for having me on the show. As you said, I'm a business consultant, community activist. Actually born in Birmingham, Alabama, Roll Tide, and I'm Alabama by birth, as I say. Growing up in Birmingham, went to college at Morehouse College in Atlanta, and kind of traveled all over the U.S. for a while. Ended up in New York, and now I'm here in Fullerton, California. So I'm now a Southern California kid. Have a finance and property and casualty background as a trainer, team manager, compliance officer, collaborated with learning and development. And in 2020, I decided to take all those skills and combine those with my community activism. I am on the board of the LGBTQ Center here in Orange County, and I am on the steering committee for HRC for Orange County. So I'm very active in the LGBTQ community. So I decided to take all those things, put them together. And I created the Kinsey Group, which is my consulting firm, and we specialize in leadership consulting and diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting, specifically on queer issues when it comes to organizations. But of course, all the intersecting things that come along with that as well. So that's right. My background.
Wow, and from my understanding, this is your first podcast.
This is my very first podcast. You're the first one to ask me. I appreciate it.
Wow, and you come to one that you have to remove your armor to talk. So, man, I commend you for having the courage. But let's jump right into the topic. This is how we do it here.
Absolutely.
You know, from my understanding, you're about 16, 17 years old. I mean, in your introduction, you mentioned some of your initiatives that you're doing and representing the community, right? You know, and you go, you know, I'm starting to think that I like men and women, right? And it's real. Talk to me about how that journey impacted your life. Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. And I love being unarmored. I like to show up as my authentic self. And I feel like that's kind of the business that I'm building up also. So people can do that everywhere. But I would probably have to go back before 16 and 17. I probably have to go back to probably elementary school, and knowing that from what I'm being told by the people around me, I think I'm a little bit different from that. I didn't have the words of pansexual or bisexual at that point in time. But that was how I was understanding the world to be. Unfortunately, growing up in the Deep South and growing up in a Black household, that really, really butts up against some very, very entrenched cultural issues. And so from a very early age, I had a really, really hard time when it comes to coming to terms with my identity. Of course, there was probably an impossibility to be out at that point in time, probably before high school. Just basically for safety. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to queer kids in general, but especially queer kids of color who are growing up in cultural situations where there just is no safe space for you as a queer person. And so it takes a lot to be able to maneuver through that environment. So very early on, experience violence and definitely unsafety when it comes to my identity. And sometime around 16 or 17 is when I started coming out to some of my family, not my parents, but to some siblings and people I was dating and friends. And I started to, I did have some safe spaces within those folks to be able to actually have some interesting conversations and start to explore what that means to me.
You know, when you mentioned safe space and you would think that no matter what we have going on in the world, we can go home and feel safe.
Yes.
But from what I'm hearing from you, your home wasn't even a safe space per se.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about how that impacted you, where your safe space wasn't the typical safe space for young people.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting because in HRC, if you go on their website, they have a lot of indices that talks about what youth of color are going through at home. And really, they're going through it more at home, from what the stats say, than they are when they're actually in public.
Wow.
They're actually probably getting more support outside of their home than within their home because of being unsafe. And that's because of the culture. Black culture is usually not amenable to that sort of situation. And I use this example. There was a recent cultural event called Versus. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a very Black online event that was created during the pandemic, and it is where you have these two Black artists come together and they talk about their music. And so this last one was the Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind and Fire, which I'm super excited about. Right, I love both of those groups, and this is supposed to feel like home to me.
Right.
This is all this music, all these great stories, and Steve Harvey, who was hosting the event, came up and all of a sudden and said, hey, what, back in the 70s, we didn't have this, we didn't have that, we didn't have men dancing with men, and all of a sudden now my safety has just been eroded off with that one comment. And the interesting thing about that comment is it wasn't that men weren't dancing with men, it was that it was actually looked down upon and they weren't safe to dance with men, right? And it's the same argument that someone would say, well, there was no racism in the 60s and 50s. No, you just probably were of the demographic that didn't experience racism.
Right.
That doesn't mean racism didn't exist. So, I use that as an example to say that was an event where I totally felt like that was my home. I should have been very comfortable there, but all of a sudden, that microaggression, could be a macroaggression, all of a sudden made that experience unsafe. And, Black culture has a lot of toxic masculinity. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like hearing that word and feel like it's a buzzword, but it's very representative of what it means to be a Black man. It's very rigid. And one of the reasons why I feel comfortable coming on your show and the work that I do is because I'm wanting to change what that idea is, right? I love Black culture. I don't want to get rid of Black culture, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I do want to be able to work within our culture to say, okay, these things are serving us and these things aren't. We're actually we're abusing and we're not protecting and we're not nurturing our children the way we should. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
So that's a bridge I want to build.
And at one point, during this journey, at one point did you start to question yourself, like, why am I like this, and why me, and am I bad, right? Or I don't know if you believe in you have Christian beliefs, or right, which I'm assuming. I don't like to assume this is Unarmored Talk to be accurate, and you can let me know. But why am I like this? And is God gonna look at me bad? And is my faith being questioned? Have you ever had that confusion?
Yes, and I'll tell you from the very start. So I grew up. I always say not even Southern Baptist, but Country Baptist in a small family church, which I love. I mean, it nurtured me. But right from the very beginning, the message was given to me that who I identify with inside was going to automatically send me to hell.
Wow.
And as a small child, I had the fear that I was going to burn in hell from the very beginning. And, you as a queer person, a queer child, you start making these bargains with God, you start pleading with God, and you start trying to figure out how you can try to save yourself. And some people do it differently than others. I had a very nurturing father who allowed me to kind of make decisions on my own. Mm-hmm. And so I remember praying to God. And one day the gate didn't go away. So I was like, all right, God, it's me and you. I'm moving forward now. I remember in high school, I had that conversation with God in church. Wow. And I identify as Christian. I identify as a Christian Buddhist. That's my slant. Right. But I don't try to put down anybody else's thought process, and I'm very welcoming and very liberal when it comes to that. But Christianity, unfortunately, has really put a lot of queer kids in a really, really bad situation very early. And, there was talk at one point in high school with one of my parents to put me through conversion therapy, right? Because they wanted me fixed, right? We need to fix you the way
Right.
God wants you to be.
So we, hey, you know what? You have a check engine light. So
Yeah.
so we believe that we're going to fix you
Yes.
by doing A, B, and C.
Yes.
That's
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, very specifically, if this is true what we hear, there's something we can do. We can get almost to those words. We can get you fixed. And, this is me right before I was going to college. I was like, oh, don't worry about that. I'm straight. It's fine. I did everything I could to stay at home and then to get out and get to college, because I just didn't want to go through that. But I do know people, very close friends of mine, who they went to conversion and they went to some of these work camps, and it is violence, and it is traumatic. And it's really, really bad. And just to kind of talk about some popular culture stuff right now, but Little Nas X, I mentioned this to you before. He's this huge pop star who was like a huge Black country star who all of a sudden came out as gay. And then he released this video for his song Montero about a month or so ago. And it caused a lot of controversy because it's him dealing with this satanic issue. He's like giving Satan a lap dance, and he goes to hell. And it for people who are straight, it's very alarming to them. Right. They're like, why would he do that? What point is he trying to make? Right? Is he trying to corrupt our children? But his point is, and there's a really good article on NPR by a writer named Ashton Crawley, which I recommend everyone read. But that that video basically talks about his experience growing up and being told that he was inherently evil, and how he had to learn to come to terms with that just to be able to be happy with himself. Wow. Just to be able to live and to not have to carry guilt and shame. That was that Faustian deal he had to make with the devil. And at the end of the video, people get that far, he actually ends up killing the devil, right? Because that's like his victory over that. And so, there's a lot of things out right now where people are really starting to talk about what that means. And I'm proud. Yeah. Whenever somebody releases a controversial video like that, right, it's shocking, but we need to have the conversation because this is something that I think a lot of Black parents are struggling with when it comes to their queer kids.
Yeah. And going back to, what you said, being authentic. And then of course, this podcast is real life conversations. So I agree with you that to have the courage to publicly really manifest who you are, period. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're straight or gay, just be you. Mm-hmm. And understanding that we're going to change every second of the day as human beings, and the constants, we're all humans. So any depression, any depression during this belief battle, right? You're praying to God, you're going, God, hey, what's up, God? Ain't nothing changing. So I guess, God, I think this is my path. And now you have your family members going, we're going to send you to conversion. That's some high world-class training that's going to really fix you. And you're not even broken, by the way. During all of this, any depression set in?
The short answer is yes. Probably hell yes. Yes, depression and anxiety I feel like that was something that just kind of followed me around for a long time. When you're a teenager or preteen, life is hard enough. I mean, life is not easy for a preteen. And so when you add that added layer of stress onto their life, and then, there's a concept of stereotype threat that you live with, even when, and this is a phenomenon with anyone who has a marginalized identity, but especially for queer folk, you're walking around with this fear that there will be threat of stereotypes. So you have to always kind of be active about not making sure you don't put yourself in those situations, right? So there's this fear and this stress that you carry around with you at all times that is just heavy. And the facts bear out that queer people, but especially queer people of color, really, really struggle with a lot of negative mental health outcomes because of what they experience coming of age. And then even when you come of age, within the culture, everybody doesn't have the same opportunity to be as vocal as I've been, right? So, and I don't want to judge anybody's experience,
Right.
but there's a lot of people. This is just from my experience. There's a lot of people who still struggle with that in adulthood. They're still carrying that stuff around. There was I can't believe I can't remember this kid's name, but it was a kid in Alabama who committed suicide as a preteen because he was being bullied at school for being queer, a black gay kid.
Yeah.
And that stuff is heartbreaking to me. When I heard about that, I absolutely automatically knew exactly what he was going through. So yeah, it definitely creates negative mental health outcomes, and we all find different ways to get through it, I guess you could say.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever, decided, hey, this is where I want to go live, right? This is an area. Have you ever had the situation where you're like, but I wonder if I live here or I live in this area, what am I going to experience as far as treatment? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I used to do catastrophe operations for a long time. And so I traveled all over the United States, from all kind of cities, right? So from big cities like, St. Louis or, Metro New York, but then you have small towns, Salina, Kansas, I've been to, and Fargo, North Dakota, right?
Right.
And you do have to think about your safety when you're in those places. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't feel that they can be their authentic selves in those spaces. And for myself, specifically, we talk about privilege, and people say, oh, well, what, you're black and you're queer, well, then therefore, you don't experience privilege. I experience a lot of privilege for a few reasons, but one of the reasons that I experience privilege is because my presentation meets a heteronormative idea. So if I'm maneuvering around a small town, of course I'm black, everybody sees that, so that's one issue. But when it comes to the queer issue, that's not something that comes into people's head. Everybody doesn't have that privilege, right? Everybody does not experience the privilege of meeting this heteronormative idea, and so they become targets right off the bat. Right. So yeah, you really have to consider where you're living, where you're moving, traveling. And this is an issue for a lot of people who are trans and non-binary. If you are traveling across country, you probably want to decide where you're going to stop and how long you're going to be there, and how much you're going to interact with people around you, because it can be dangerous.
Yeah, that's great points. And I know we all think about our safety at one point, but we have different reasons why we're thinking about our safety. And I like how one thing I like about you, Jay, in your journey in life is how you haven't stopped. You're still, you're a community activist, you're a business consultant, you're in Southern California doing things. I've seen you in action myself, and I love how you battle with depression. You had questions about your Christianity. You've had family members say, we're going to fix you because you can't, because you're broken and you're not. How did you get to this point where now you're just this, in my eyes, successful professional who is courageous and who's not afraid to be authentic?
That's a good question. I don't want to say it's just all my doing. I will say that I had a good, of the things I grew up around, I had a really, really strong father who really helped me to be my authentic self. He passed away when I was pretty young, in my early 20s. But, he kind of instilled in me this idea to always show up as I am. And no matter whether he agreed with it or not, that was something that was really important to me. And for me, when it comes to the things that I've been through, for some reason, when I go through scenarios that try to limit me, they seem to give me a little bit of energy to actually try to get on the other side of this thing. And my journey, when I was actually at one of the companies that I worked for, a really large organization, I was actually married at that time. And again, I have this heteronormative privilege, and I found myself. I actually did I was on the diversity and inclusion council for my organization, and we did a panel on trans issues. And after the panel, one of the people in the audience came up to me and said, Jay, thank you so much for being a straight ally. And that really messed me up because I was like, I just got erased, right? I just got put back in the closet. And so,
Wait a minute. What's a straight ally?
so a straight ally, like right now, you're being a straight ally right now, right? You're not LGBTQ, but you've got me on this show and we're talking about queer issues and you are a support, right? That means you're an ally, right? And so I'm not straight, but she assumed that I was straight, right? And she was thanking me. And that was one of those situations that really helped me to know, okay, I can't be in the closet. I don't want to be passing as straight. So this is one of those things that really helped me get involved in the community. And also one of the things that really helped me to identify. I identify as pansexual or bisexual wherever I go because I don't want to have to succumb to that heteronormativity. And I also want to be an advocate for somebody who's in that room who's either afraid of coming out or they are already experiencing bullying or some sort of violence from people around them. I want to be able to walk into that room and become an instant ally for them and also to challenge people's ideas and notions of what it means to be queer.
Yeah.
I think people don't really have an idea about what that truly means. So, that's something I like to do. And I kind of double down on it.
Yeah. And you mentioned fear. Anytime, where, if you can go back and think, what moment was the most that brought the most fear, the feeling of fear, emotion of fear into you? And then how did you think through that fear?
Gosh, I think one of the things that probably brought the most fear was growing up actually as a kid and trying to figure out how to navigate with the kids around me who had views about what it means to be queer and how was I going to navigate through that. And I already told you about the Faustian bargain I made with God in the back of the church one day. I'm like, hey, we're moving forward. And for me, navigating through that fear, I had to try to find people who I could trust. And so at that point in time, sometime around probably 15 or 16, I identified a couple of friends and I came out to them. And it was just, it was something about having that place where I could go.
Right.
If it was only to one or two people where I could kind of feel normal and be able to have somebody at least validate me a little bit and be able to actually walk through that fear. You never get rid of fear.
Right.
Fear is a constant companion of ours. What we do get to do is use courage on with that fear. And I don't want to say I was so courageous at that time because I don't want to sound arrogant because I wasn't. But I was looking for some safe space and someone to be able to validate what I was experiencing. So I remember actually coming out that first time, and that was just absolutely mind-boggling and scary. And I'm lucky enough that those first couple of friends that I came out to was a safe experience, and it was a good experience. So if there's anybody out there who's struggling with that fear, find somebody who you can trust, who you can lean on. Also, if you're struggling right now, there are probably in your neighborhood, there's an LGBTQ center around you. If you're in Southern California, LA and Orange County has great centers. Reach out. There's just so much assistance that you can get. But finding somebody that you can really lean on, there's suicide hotlines, the Trevor Project. There's a lot of things out there that can get you through. You're not alone.
I like that, Jay. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from Jay. He talked about how his father and his leadership behavior, right, in the household set conditions for him to navigate through some of his personal, professional challenges. He talked about finding not just a friend, right, but someone you can trust, not giving up. And then here we are now, years later. What are you, Jay? 20? You look 28, 29?
I'm 29, actually. Thank you. I'll be 43 in September.
Well, happy early birthday. And here you are, leaving us some amazing wisdom and ways to accurately think through feelings and emotions when we're challenged with, situations while living. Is there any last words you can leave our listeners and viewers, some advice for them?
Absolutely. So thank you again for having me here. And if I have to have any last words, will probably be to address all our straight allies that I talked about, right? And if you are a straight ally and you are in a position of power, within your organization or within your group or within your school or whatever that organization is. Be brave, take some chances, learn as much as you can about what it means to be queer. There's a lot of resources out there that explains to you what sexual orientation is, gender identity. Educate yourself on those things. And I'm not telling you to be an expert on it, because you're not going to be. What we want you to do is to be open to these ideas, to understand these ideas. And then we want you to hold space, right? We want you to have grace and have space for people. So if you are in those positions of power, if you are a leader, look for those opportunities to be an inclusive leader. Inclusive leadership is really important, and be able to be that person who can be that trusted person in their life who actually helps them to be the best they can be. You know, when we're in organizations, when you allow people to thrive, you're going to get a better work product. You're going to get a better employee, right? So you do it to be helpful, and you do it because it's the right thing. But you need to also do it because you're understanding that it's going to help your organization, it's going to help your leadership, it's going to help your business. So really lean into it. Don't shy away from it. Lean into it and go from being an ally to an activist. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah, I like it. And Jay is well sought after in the business circles. How can the listeners and viewers find you?
Absolutely. So my website is Akinzee, AKINZEE.com. And I am at J.O. Prewitt on Twitter. So you can reach out to me at both of those places. And on my website, Akinzee.com, all my contact information is there. So absolutely.
Nice.
Learn more about the business, and love to hear from you.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward, Jay, to working with you as a colleague, a partner, a stakeholder, and whatever we can do in the business and the professional sector to continue to, to inspire some change around the world. Thank you for removing your armor to come on Unarmored Talk. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you later.